Thank you.
3, 2, 1.
Well, the nation's capital, it's Orangutech's Seminars Live. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We did have a little technical issues, but here we are live and really thanking everybody. I've been saying this for 4 years, and I'm going to say it many, many more times. If you're dialing in and hearing me say it, let me say it again. You, the Government of Canada IT community, have been awesome. Last 4 years, I've never seen the community so dialed in, so engaged, so hitting it on the mark, and it's just been fabulous. In the last 7, 8 months, you've really proved it. You've proved it to your clients. I know you've proved it to your departments, and particularly you've proved it to the citizens of Canada. I was on the virtual DPI Gala a few weeks ago, and lots of awards going out to the IT community that helped the citizens of Canada. So congratulations. We know it's been a big task, particularly around Office 365. You've really killed it. I just want to say one more time, congratulations. If you hadn't heard it enough, I want to say it many, many, many times. So thank you. Quick administration. If you want to ask questions, please do. At the end of the presentations and at the demo, I will MC those questions. We will publish the questions. And as we publish the questions, do vote for them. You've already seen people voting for some of the things on the side. So really appreciate people voting. And then we'll ask the questions that have the most votes. So thanking everybody. I'm Barry Doucette, CEO of Orangutech. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to walk through a presentation with WalkMe called Establishing Business Continuity in Office 365 using WalkMe. We have two superb presenters, and just found out they're both Canadian, which is fabulous. Mr. Dan Fanaberia, he's Dan and Ben Husani, both have radio voices. Dan's from Montreal. He's been with us and working with us last couple of years. Super guy. You'll really enjoy him. And Ben Husani, he is from Ottawa, actually. And the reason I just found out he's from a Canadian, he's actually working out of Nashville. He's been in the United States for quite a few years. Ben's been with WalkMe for 5.5 years, and Dan's been with WalkMe for a couple of years now. Dan's going to walk through, here's the problems that WalkMe solves, and here's how they solve it. And then Ben's going to walk through demos of how WalkMe is used on Teams, how it's worked on SharePoint, and then how you can see how simple it is actually to author some WalkMe as we go forward. I'm going to turn it over to Dan. You can see on the left-hand side of the presentation some of the clients that are using this, all the Canadian clients. Dan's been involved with all of them. We, Orangutech, have been involved with all the federal government departments using WalkMe. It's Global Affairs, it's Department of Justice, Transport Canada, and Indigenous Services Canada right now, all using it and doing a fabulous job for their clients while using WalkMe. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away, Dan.
All right, thank you very much, Barry. How's the audio sound? And double check, can you all see the beautiful title screen here?
I can see it, and you sound good, Dan.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you very much for hosting us, Barry. As mentioned, my name is Dan Fanaberia, and I'm based in Montreal, Canada, where I happen to run public services for WalkMe, as well as our banks. All 5 major banks are heavy WalkMe customers. And I'm lucky enough to partner with Orangutech, who runs all of our Government of Canada deployments of WalkMe at the multiple departments, as well as makes it very easy for Government of Canada departments to procure WalkMe via standing offer. So we're very grateful for that partnership that dates back many years now. So the agenda today is to cover what the digital adoption challenge is, in our opinion. And we're taking this from empirical data across about 5,000 customers, including, well over 60% of the Fortune 100. So it's not just from public sector data. It's customer data from the likes of Walmart, ExxonMobil, Royal Bank of Canada. And what we're going to lay out for you is the challenges we've seen with our customers, specifically at the Government of Canada, on getting employees or citizens, any digital user, to onboard, perform, accept change management, and remain productive on Office 365 tools, as well as other Microsoft applications where WalkMe is driving contextual user guidance in the flow of work. We're also going to discuss proven customer value, talk a little bit about what we've done with Department of Justice and other customers. And of course, we're going to hand it over to Ben, my sales engineer, who's going to show you a live demonstration of WalkMe on Microsoft Teams, Microsoft SharePoint, and even on your desktop to show you how we can meet your employees or your users wherever they are on any device. So the digital adoption challenge. Digital adoption may sound like a buzzword, but it's actually something that WalkMe's pioneered since 2011, and it's very applicable to Government of Canada departmental operational efficiency. If you imagine the analogy of a GPS in your car, as an example, you get in your car, you're in Ottawa, you'd like to drive to Mont-Tremblant. If the mountain opens, I hope it will, and here you are in your car, and there's road closures, there's traffic going through Orleans, there's all kinds of weird things happening. The GPS is going to route you to Mont-Tremblant efficiently. If there are road closures, police on the roads, different sequences that may give you a faster route, the GPS will get you to your destination efficiently. It's in real time. It's contextual to where you are. You are driving in your car. It's not a simulation. Your hands are on the wheel, your wheels are on the ground. But the GPS knows where you are, and it's helping you and whispering in your ear at the time of need. That's one of the many things that WalkMe does. You're on the application. You're in O365. You're going around trying to conduct your day. WalkMe is with you along the way, guiding you, prompting you, and performing contextual guidance, just like a GPS helps you in your car. Employees and citizens are overwhelmed with digital learning. Obviously, today is about O365, but we have WalkMe deployed on a multitude of applications at the Government of Canada departments. If you look at the private sector, we could probably name 1,000 applications I've seen or heard of WalkMe deployed on. Unfortunately, the way we teach right now is not very effective. If 70% of what is learned is forgotten in one day, and it takes 8 to 12 months to become proficient at something, and 6.5 hours a week out of your day to learn, how does that work at the Government of Canada, where some of the most talented white-collar workers in Canada are switching departments every year or two based on their career progression and where taxpayers need them because of their talent? If every time a new employee walks in the door at ESDC, RCMP, DOJ, GAC, ISC, VAC, how do you keep people productive when they have to learn new policies and procedures on every single system? Again, we started digital adoption, but we're proud of it. I mean, honestly, we've won so many awards, it's not even worth mentioning. And we're very humble in accepting those, mainly because in a COVID world, in a post-COVID world where people are working from home, we've emerged as one of the most effective technologies to preserve business continuity, because the WalkMe content that Ben's going to show you today meets people where they are, in the application, on a website, on their desktop, on a mobile phone, anywhere. Department of Justice, over 2.5 years ago, I think 3 years now, since they've been with WalkMe via Orangutech. Simplified training and onboarding, easy to develop. The content, by the way, that Ben's going to show you, there's no coding necessary. The publishing tools, click and drag. It's like building a macros in Excel. It's so easy. The user feedback from targeted audience at DOJ is, we love this, we want more. And lo and behold, WalkMe has been deployed on many more applications there. The user behavior analytics that Ben's going to show you, which is pretty much being able to look into a pane of glass on a dashboard and see where users are succeeding and where they're dropping off on processes and bottlenecks within O365, has been really helpful and tangible for the WalkMe owners at DOJ to conduct the best strategy for moving forward. And of course, the challenge of bilingualism was simplified because WalkMe relies on very little text. You're translating words like click here, click ici, instead of an encyclopedia. So money and hard cost savings is no question, but that's not what today's only about. Today's not just about saving money. Today's also about employee experience and making sure that the workers at these departments of Government of Canada can do their job properly and feel fulfillment in their day, that they're not constantly learning. At the end of the day, references are available at DOJ, any of the ISC, PSPC, all the different departments who use WalkMe. But keep in mind that Orangutech are really truly the WalkMe experts for Government of Canada, and they can connect you with any references you'd like. Typical results in the field are like 51 to 60% reduction in training time when you have WalkMe instead of traditional training. Operation cycles and back office, middle office cycles increase and accelerated by up to 90% with WalkMe guiding people instead of people swivel chairing in an office to ask somebody for help. When we work from home, it's pretty hard to ask somebody for help. If you look at BMO, where they place WalkMe on, I guess, a citizen-facing or customer-facing website, just as an example, they reduced the support calls to their call center by 50% on commercial banking. I mean, if you look at the banks that use WalkMe, they use it for employees, but also for citizens, for customers. Customer satisfaction level increases, employee satisfaction level increases. So what is a digital adoption platform? Well, we're an overlay technology. There's no changes to the back end. We insert JavaScript on the front end of the page. That's it. If it's a native mobile application, it's an SDK deployment via an MDM strategy. If it's on a desktop, if it's a mainframe system or a DOS file or it's an Office desktop, you use our WalkMe desktop solution, which is an MSI file. But at the end of the day, there's nothing I mentioned that requires any back-end integration. We're an overlay. Now, guidance is very popular. You'll see in the demo with Ben that to guide somebody, similar to the GPS analogy, is what made WalkMe very famous. Click here, do that. Click here, do that. Contextual, not a simulation. In the flow of work, real. You do it in the app, WalkMe's following along and prodding you and making sure you take the right steps contextually. That's what made WalkMe famous. Engagement is what is making WalkMe even more utilized at the Government of Canada. That's proactive. That means don't wait. Do not only wait for the user to ask for help. Engage them. Pop up a communication on their screen automatically when they're on a page, when they do something. If the user ID is this, if the persona is this, if they click the wrong button on that, and ask them if they need help, show them they need help, give them a call to action, they click a button, it executes it. WalkMe will guide you through. Engage them. Don't just wait for them to ask for help. Automation is the icing on the cake. Because WalkMe is on the front end and attached to web tags, it's very easy for WalkMe to click for you. As an example, if there's a repetitive task that involves going through 3 pages on Teams or clicking 3 buttons on Teams or SharePoint or any cross-application flow within O365, there's times when it's worth having WalkMe do the clicking for you. Think of robotic process automation, but on the front end. Very different. It's UI. But at the end of the day, it's utilized by most of our customers for those instances where it's less important to teach and more important to do. From an insights point of view, like I said, you get the user behavior analytics, adoption processes, per user, per process, per drop-off rate, anywhere on the site. Now, physically, WalkMe's 3 things. In one part, it's a publishing tool that you, the administrator, has. A small handful of people at each department would be a WalkMe administrator, and Orangutech would train and facilitate and deploy with you. It's easy to build, no coding necessary. In the middle of my screen, you'll see the end user experience. That's the overlay. That's the content that you built that's being thrown down on the page, on the front end of any system, app, or device for any user or citizen. And the analytics, again, back to those small handful of people at the department who are administrators, that's who gets to see the analytics. So we're 3 things, like deployment methods. If you own the site or the application, you can just inject a little 2-line JavaScript snippet into the HTML, right between the header and the footer. If it's third party, like Microsoft, for instance, on a web-based experience, you can use a browser extension, a browser plugin that drops the JavaScript and inserts it into the page. If you're deploying WalkMe on a desktop mainframe system that's not accessed, the app's not accessed via web browser, we have an MSI file. It's an MSI WalkMe desktop solution that your IT department distributes to people's computers, and they receive WalkMe guidance on their computer outside of web browsers. And if it's native mobile, we have the SDK deployment. Keep in mind that our web-based solution is highly popular as well because it's responsive. It could work on any web-accessed mobile browser. Government of Canada approved information security. Government of Canada approved hosting options. Host with us or host with you. So before we get into the demo, I'd ask you to take a screenshot if possible. Eric at Orangutech, Eric Hein is waiting, and we'll set up demos. Myself, Ben, Katie, I have a whole team that works on public sector that can give you demos at any time. And Orangutech would be able to facilitate any commercial discussions as well as strategic discussions, because Orangutech single-handedly deploys and facilitates all WalkMe at Government of Canada. I'll be waiting at the end for Q&A, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. All right. Again, want to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. Really excited to see such a great turnout. My name is Ben. Going to be running point on the demo today. As Dan mentioned in his slides, there were a couple different layers of WalkMe's end user experience that you saw. There was guidance, engagement, and automation. And in the demo today that I'm going to take you through, I'm going to show you a couple examples of each. So the team can really start to think of the possibilities with WalkMe. But I do want to emphasize, keep in mind that you don't have to use everything you see here day one. And in fact, with a lot of our clients, they approach this kind of from a crawl, walk, run strategy. It's really common, right? You don't have to use everything from day one. And then just the last point I'll make before we dive into the demo is remember that WalkMe is application agnostic. So, today we are going to focus, of course, on Office 365, but WalkMe is deployed on thousands of different applications, as Dan did mention. So with that said, let's go ahead and start off, and we're going to kind of start with the basics here. The first example I'm going to show you is an example of guidance that Dan talked about. So here we have Microsoft Teams pulled up, and what you'll notice on the right-hand side is this interactive help center. And this is WalkMe actually layered directly on top of Teams. And essentially what this serves as is a centralized repository where users can now go anytime they need help. Right, so we're bringing all of those important documents, resources, and processes directly to the user's fingertips. Now, these may be videos, important documents, and as you're going to see in a moment, they could be WalkMe processes that'll handhold them. And I'll just show you a quick example of maybe a video, right? So a video that traditionally lives in another system, we can now bring directly to the user's fingertips, so they don't have to go elsewhere to find this. Now, the last call out I'll make here before we jump into an example of guidance is that everything you're seeing here in this help center, and I'll kind of call this out throughout the demo, is that everything you're seeing here can be contextualized. So let's just imagine we were in SharePoint for a moment, right? In SharePoint, you have admins, you have your everyday employees, and the things they need to do inside of SharePoint are quite different based on their role. So everything here can be contextualized based on who the user is so they see what's most relevant to them. Now, in this scenario, let's just say that I'm that user in Teams and I need help creating a team. What I can now do, instead of the traditional experience of walking over to a colleague for help, which unfortunately because of COVID today is not possible, or pinging someone or looking for a job aid, I can actually search within WalkMe for what I need help with, in this case, creating a team. And I select a result. And what WalkMe now starts to do is basically use that in-application guidance, that GPS-like functionality to handhold me through this transaction. So in real time, it's able to start calling out the different clicks and basically tell me, hey, Ben, you need to first click Teams, click Join or create a team. And in real time, again, it's starting to take me through all the various steps involved in this process to get me to that end destination. So all the instructions, all the information, everything the user needs is now right in front of them. They don't have to go to elsewhere to find this. And it's a lot more than just click here, click there, right? As you're going to see in a moment, we can bring all of that context directly to the user. So the why, right? What do these different options mean, right? Applications are quite complex. There's a lot users can do. And WalkMe is essentially bringing all that information right in front of the user so they don't need to go elsewhere to locate it. Now, one call out I want to make, because I think it's always helpful to hear about client success stories when you're seeing examples and demos like this. One of my clients took what used to be kind of 15 to 30-minute classroom trainings, and instead they now just build them into these kind of 2-minute guided experiences that you see inside of the application, right? And not only did this significantly improve the employee experience on all these different systems, but it had a pretty significant impact on the bottom line, right? They saw a large reduction in those expensive classroom trainings that I'm sure we're all familiar with. And keep in mind, what I'm showing you here right now, it's just starting to scratch the surface. We're going to jump into some more robust examples from here. All right, So switching gears a little bit, I know the focus of today's presentation is on Office 365, and I promise we're going to stay in there for the majority of the demo, but as I mentioned, it's important to note that WalkMe can support many applications, and we can also support cross-application processes. Because the reality is that processes aren't always limited to just one application, right? Oftentimes users need to start in one system, then navigate to another. So in this example, let's just say that I'm a user and I start in system A. In this case, it's a CRM. It could be any system. And I'm going through and I'm creating a task, right? And WalkMe's kind of guiding me, so I'm just following the prompts on the screen. And at the end of this process, when I save this, due to some sort of internal policy we have at the organization, if this task includes a document, it also needs to be uploaded in SharePoint to comply with our document process requirement that we have internally. So you'll notice that once I create it, WalkMe says, okay, you created it, but now there's another step. You need to go to SharePoint and you need to upload it there as well. And not only does WalkMe remind the user of that, but it includes a link that when they click on, it launches the user from system A, again, that could be any system, in that case it was a CRM, into SharePoint, and then it starts to actually handhold them using those visual cues that you were seeing a little bit earlier. Scrolls them down the page and says, here's exactly where you need to upload it. So I think this is a really great use case around demonstrating how WalkMe can kind of bridge the gap between these various systems. Because the reality is, we don't want users to have to figure out where they need to go next. WalkMe can kind of point them in the right direction. Now, the last examples I'm going to show around guidance before we switch over into the engagement side of things, it's going to be on this page here. And I just want to emphasize, the previous examples we looked at were what I like to call the ideal scenario, right? The user knew they needed help from the beginning and they asked for it. So they went to that help center, and they said, hey, WalkMe, show me how to create a team. But, I can say from personal experience, using various applications, this is not always the case, right? Users sometimes get through part of a process on their own, and then they get stuck, and this can obviously be quite frustrating. So WalkMe can address this kind of sort of scenario and user frustration by having more of what we call embedded experiences, really ensuring users, have the right information in the right place at the right time. So in this case, I'm in SharePoint, and I'm going through, I'm creating a task, right? And as you'll see, I've already completed a couple of steps. I've entered the name, the date, but then I realized, hey, I'm not really sure what to do from here. There's some fields I'm not familiar with. So instead of, again, going to a colleague asking for help or trying to brute force my way through it, I notice a button here at the top of the page that says Walk Me Through. And this is a Walk Me button. And essentially, once I click on this, Walk Me quickly understands my context. It knows where I'm at in that process, and it begins servicing those turn-by-turn directions. So I've seen a lot of clients use this to kind of reduce that user frustration that happens when users get stuck in a process, which can ultimately lead to users brute forcing their way through processes incorrectly, which we want to avoid, right? By placing a simple button here, we can avoid users from doing that. The other call out I'll make here is another example of an embedded experience are this little question mark you're seeing here. So this is WalkMe as well. We call this a hover tip or a smart tip. And this is basically contextual help that users can access in that flow of work at any time, right? Because users don't necessarily always need that step-by-step guidance. They may just be on a form like this that's complex, and they need a little bit of help around what a specific field means, what information is needed from them. So as opposed to the user having to leave this system to get this information, they can simply hover over a little tooltip, and they could see a definition. They could see a video. It could be a link to another resource. And I'll call out that these are really popular with our clients. One of my clients rolled out just 5 of these as a part of their initial rollout. And in the analytics that we offer that Dan was talking about, they were able to see in the first 3 months, they had 21,000 views by their employees. If you think of even a small percentage of that 21,000 having turned into a question, WalkMe is really helping deflect a lot of those. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit into engagement. So Dan also talked about this in the slides. Up until now, we've looked at WalkMe in its reactive form, right? I, as a user, again, turned to WalkMe. I went to the Help Center. I clicked on this Walk Me Through button, or I hovered over this question mark or this little, tooltip to get help. But the reality is, users don't necessarily always know when they need help. So this is where WalkMe can be more proactive. We can engage with users. We can make recommendations. We can even enforce user behavior where it makes sense. And ultimately, as you're going to see, what this can do is a couple of things. It can reduce user frustration when users don't know what to do. It can help improve data integrity. It can also drive specific policies and procedures. So the example we have here, we're still going through this task process, and I'm not using WalkMe right now, right? I'm just using SharePoint as I would any other day. And I set the priority of this task to high. What you'll notice, as soon as I did that, WalkMe proactively reminded the user that when setting the priority to high, there are some implications they need to be aware of. So we're presenting that information to them in the exact moment that it's relevant. Otherwise, the user may not have known this, right? This may have lived in some job aid elsewhere, whereas WalkMe is presenting it to them right in that relevant moment. And these can be rule-based, of course, right? We can take a lot of that complex logic, that decision tree logic, those if-then statements, but with no coding, and present it directly in the interface of the application. Now, another use case I like to call out, particularly around engagement, is using WalkMe as a communication mechanism. We think of today's reality for much of the workforce, we see a common theme, and that's email overload, right? I think we can all agree we get hundreds of emails a week, and going off of that thought, it can be easy for information to get lost kind of in the noise. So with WalkMe, we can actually provide contextual in-application messaging at the right moment. An example I'm going to use here, I'm going to navigate over to the Calendars tab of SharePoint. And as soon as I land on that page, what you're going to notice in just a moment here is that WalkMe is going to actually reach out to the user. So this is a WalkMe notification, a shout out we call it. And it's letting this user know that, hey, since the last time you were on this page in SharePoint, there's been a critical update. Something has changed. And it's presenting them with a quick video maybe, right? A quick overview of the change. But then we can even drive the user to action, right? Instead of saying, go figure out what those changes are on your own now, we have a button here that says, show me how. User clicks on it, and right away, WalkMe starts servicing that guidance that calls out what those changes are. And a lot of our clients are using this specific functionality you saw here specifically to drive, obviously, user behavior, but then also to increase adoption of features that maybe are underutilized that we know our users will get value out of. So being able to call those out in application. So I want to switch gears into kind of the last layer of WalkMe. And then as Dan mentioned, we'll also show you a couple experiences on the desktop. But the last layer is called automation. So this is really going to be our full-blown automation capabilities and showing you how WalkMe can help drive productivity and process. When we think of processes, they often include a lot of empty clicks, and it can cause user confusion, quite frankly, right? Users don't know where to enter data. There's a lot of moving parts to processes. So what we have is called the WalkMe Action Bot. And Action Bot, I'm going to show you here in just a moment, addresses these two common challenges. Basically, what users can now do is they can engage with the bot. So I'm opening it up right here in the bottom right of my screen. And this bot is now going to present me with a list of FAQs, right? So these are all those common processes that I may need to complete on a regular basis. What I simply now do is I select what I need help with. So I want to create a task. It's going to start to ask me a series of questions. So it's going to say, well, what's the name of the task? Basically gathering all the information that's needed to complete this transaction. And then once I provide this information to the bot, what you're going to now see, I'm actually not touching my keyboard or mouse at this point. And WalkMe is taking over. It's going to navigate me to the correct page. But not only is it going to do that, which obviously saves me quite a few empty clicks, but it's going to start to automate the data entry as well. So the user doesn't have to now figure out, well, where do I enter this piece of data? Where do I enter that piece of data? WalkMe is essentially bridging that gap and doing it all for the user, as you can see right up here. And then it simply says, now that we've entered all that in, you're good to go, review it, and hit save. Now keep in mind, this sort of automation you saw can be done cross-system as well, and that's where we see a lot of clients leverage this. So it doesn't have to be used on SharePoint. There's processes that span multiple systems. This automation can help really bridge that gap between those various systems. So the last thing I want to touch on here is going to be WalkMe on the desktop. And then after that, we'll jump in and spend a few minutes on the authoring experience as well as the analytics. But what I'm going to show you here is called WalkMe Workstation. And I think it's really important to show this as it really fits into the theme of business continuity, which is today's theme. WalkMe Workstation is something we released about a year ago. And it's basically WalkMe that sits directly on the end user's PC and really serves as a a digital assistant, I like to call it. And there are a couple of different use cases which I'm going to take you through. First use case is employee onboarding. So let's open this up. This is the workstation. And you'll notice within this onboarding tab I just opened up, we're essentially presenting this employee with a step-by-step structured onboarding plan. So regardless of what system users need to go to in order to onboard, WalkMe can support them. So for that day one employee, maybe we first want them to review a benefits document, right? And this traditionally would have lived in another system that they would have had to navigate to and find. We're bringing it directly to their desktop. They can review it. Maybe the next thing we want them to do is watch a quick video, right? That teaches them about our organization's values or teaches them about a specific system. That sort of content can also be surfaced directly to the user on their desktop. But then most importantly, we can use this onboarding checklist to actually launch users into the correct systems they need to go to and guide them. So in this example, new employee, probably the first thing they need to do is set up their direct deposit to ensure they get paid. And not only is WalkMe going to launch the user into that system as you're seeing here, and obviously the user needs to authenticate, which I'm going to do. But once they're authenticated, WalkMe is going to take it one step further and begin providing those turn-by-turn directions, ensuring the user knows exactly what steps they need to take to complete this process. Now, I do want to emphasize, Workstation is a lot more than just an onboarding tool. So while we started in the onboarding tab, you'll notice there's a second tab here that says Assistant Home. I've sometimes seen clients refer to this as the help menu, but this is meant to be more of that ongoing help center, right? So once an employee's onboarded and they have a question about a process or a system, they're always able to turn to this help center. So maybe they need some help with one of our HR systems, or this could be Teams, it could be SharePoint, it could be any system. And what they can now do is just come in here, select what they need help with, and similarly, WalkMe will now launch this user into the correct system and then start to guide them. And again, that could be SharePoint, Teams, it could be any system. Now, the final example I'll show before we open up the authoring tool and kind of show you what goes into actually creating this is using Workstation as a communication mechanism. So I'm going to pull up an example here just so you can see this. And this is really similar kind of to what I showed just a few minutes ago inside of SharePoint, that notification. But as you're going to notice here, it's actually displaying to the user directly on their desktop. You know, one of the challenges we saw before we developed this Workstation functionality was that sometimes our clients needed to get users into systems and they were having challenges getting them in there, right? So maybe we want our users to go in and do something in SharePoint or Teams. This is one way we can reach out to employees to drive them into those systems. It can also be used to communicate important information, right? System changes. I'll give you an example of how we use this internally at WalkMe because we obviously use our own product. We use this to drive completion of open enrollment, right? When it's the time of the year to enroll in benefits and things like that. But then also, particularly around COVID, we've been using this a lot to drive work from home best practices, right? Reaching out to our employees kind of on a regular cadence and saying, hey, have you, tried these best practices, or are you aware of these benefits that are available to you? So it can be used as kind of a reminder tool as well, directly on the desktop. So with that said, we're going to shift gears a little bit. That about covers what we showed from an end user perspective. And of course, these are all just examples. WalkMe is completely customizable. So every one of our clients is using it in a different way. I'll use SharePoint as an example, right? We have many clients using WalkMe on SharePoint, but every organization uses SharePoint a little bit differently. And that's really the beauty of this tool you're going to see in a moment, is versatile. You can adapt these to your specific processes. All right. So that is a great segue into the authoring tool. So what actually goes into creating these experiences that you've seen from an end user perspective? And in short, what you're going to see here in just a moment is that it is a code-free interface. So it's not a dev and IT lift. This is something that the business typically owns. And that's all done through the WalkMe editor, which I've pulled up here on the left-hand side. So the way we build is we open up this authoring tool alongside the system we want to build on. In this case, we're going to use SharePoint for the demo. And we're going to go ahead and click on this plus sign here to build out a new process, right? So we've identified some sort of transaction that our users are having trouble with. And for the sake of consistency, we'll stick with what we kind of demoed today, creating a task. So we name the process. We hover over here and we select the step option. And what starts to happen now is this blue rectangle appears. And this is WalkMe's patented technology that's identifying all the different elements. In this case, in SharePoint, it would do the same on any other application as well. So basically what we're doing is we're saying, okay, first step is to click tasks. We simply select it. We can reposition as needed. We can, of course, add more context, right? The why in this subtext area. And as you're starting to see, all we're really doing is we're going through the process as if we were an end user of it, which is why we really emphasize you don't need to be technical to build with WalkMe. You just need to be process oriented. You need to understand the various steps that a user may need to go through. And then we'll jump in here and we'll add, another step. So we'll just do click new task. And then as you'll see in just a moment here, as I'm doing that, WalkMe is essentially going to generate a flow diagram that's going to be visible on the left-hand side. But let's just maybe add one other step here for the sake of the demo. So there you'll see that WalkMe has a flow diagram generated. Obviously right now it's quite linear. It doesn't have to be, right? We can support different forks in the road. If there's, if-then statements, as we mentioned, we can support those. But this is basically the output of what we're creating. And we can always kind of take a quick look at it. So I'm going to jump back to the home page here, and then we can just hit play to kind of see what WalkMe generated as we did that. Let's give it 1 second to load here. So that's a really high level of the overview of the editor. Sorry, again, just scratching the surface, but I think it's always important to kind of see what goes into actually creating this. As you can see, again, not a coding practice, not a heavy endeavor IT lift. Now, in the interest of time, because I know we want to leave some time for Q&A, I'm going to just quickly jump in and spend a minute or two on the analytics. And then, of course, we'll open it up to the kind of Q&A portion of the webinar. So as Dan mentioned at the beginning, this is the third component of WalkMe. This is the Insights platform. And I just want to emphasize, before I go into this, WalkMe does not capture personal information or data from the underlying system. Essentially, what we are giving you is analytics around how the WalkMe experiences you've created are being used. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, we basically give you analytics on all the different WalkMe components. We touched on quite a few of these today, not necessarily everyone, but we definitely looked at the smart walkthroughs, that's that in-application guidance. We looked at that launcher button, right? That button that can provide help in the moment of need. We also looked at the smart tips, right? Those little hover tips that users can use to get help in the moment of need. These are all just different WalkMe applications, and we're giving you analytics behind all of them. So for example, with the smart walkthroughs, these processes we've built, we can start to see, well, hey, what are the processes that our users tend to need help with the most, right? This is a good indication of what our users struggle with. We can also tell you whether users are successfully getting to the end, right? So is WalkMe effective? Let's just say we come in here and we see, hey, it looks like only 25% of users are successfully getting to the end of this build your profile process. Well, we may want to drill down a little further. We can actually drill down and see, well, what step in the process causes users to drop off? So now we can go back to the drawing board and maybe reconfigure that workflow to ensure more users get to the end. And then maybe just a final thing I'll call out here again in the interest of time, which I think is quite powerful to show is, being able to help the organization understand support gaps. So anytime a user opens up that WalkMe Help Center, which we looked at a couple times throughout the demo, that little interactive help on the right-hand side, we can actually tell you, well, what are users looking for? How often are they looking for it? But most importantly, these two columns here on the right-hand side, are the searches resulting in an action or not? So the idea is if we come in here and we see that thousands of users are searching for how to create a task in SharePoint, but they're never taking any action, that tells us there's a support gap. So the idea is that now you can use this data to kind of determine, well, what do we need to focus on next from a training and support perspective using the WalkMe authoring tool. So that kind of wraps up what we had to show today from a demo perspective. I know we have some Q&A, and I believe, Dan, I think you had something you wanted to kind of wrap up with. So, at this point, I'm happy to pass the ball back to you.
Well, if you guys don't mind, it's Barry. I'll share my screen, and Dan and Ben, you guys have done a great job. I'm just going to go back to the opening slide, if you guys don't mind, because I think it was a really good slide, and I can talk to. I realize want to chat a little bit more about the clients, particularly the Government of Canada clients. Department of Justice, just to let everyone know what they're using it for. They're using it for a Dynamics application that goes to SharePoint. So as Ben chatted, they go from, again, Dynamics, they're using it within Dynamics, and if it goes over to SharePoint, it goes into SharePoint as well. So it's superb, quite a complex application that's used by all their lawyers, and it was launched about a year ago. It's been highly, highly successful. Global Affairs is using it in 3 different areas. They're using it for Dynamics, they're using it for SharePoint, and they're using it for Siebel. And they continue to look at different pieces in which they can use WalkMe. So it's doing extremely well. ISC, Indigenous Services Canada, is using actually for a homegrown application, which is a .NET application, and they're actually looking to use it for GC Docs. Transfer Canada just recently bought it. And they're going to be using it actually for a service group, a group that's on the road a lot, and we'll be dialing in and being able to do it with a mobile application. So that's very interesting as well. PSPC bought it for a GC case for their clients, and they will look to help their CRM Dynamics clients use WalkMe and help their clients obviously use their platform as they go forward. So that's, basically, as I mentioned, all the different pieces that the client or the federal government's using it for. Do definitely want to get to the questions. So I think I'm still sharing my screen. So I will ask the questions at the same time, try to show my looks like I can't do both here. Share my screen at the same, ask the question. Seems to be around a little bit around usability. Can you share any info around usability, testing process, and methodologies? Ben, maybe you could answer that for us.
Absolutely, and just maybe some clarification. It sounds like the question around usability is around kind of the authoring and just what does the process look like, from creating and then also like kind of testing the content. Is that accurate?
I think so.
And I guess yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I can definitely feel that. We kind of typically see clients, incorporate WalkMe as kind of the part of the release cycle of the underlying system itself, right? So just in the same way that, you're having SharePoint releases, WalkMe is kind of becoming a part of that, right? You're testing the content you've created with WalkMe. I do want to really call out that just because you're releasing maybe a new version of SharePoint doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have to change and go back and rebuild your entire WalkMe experience, right? It is adapting to things moving on the page and things like that. I don't know, Dan, if you want to kind of add on more of that just because you have familiarity with kind of the specific relationship there, but
yeah, I mean, we have a really simplified process from a usability point of view. Everything's been configured and ready for everything that the government needs, whether it's accessibility, multi-language, ease of content creation, and of course, Orangutech delivers the training and services when needed.
Yeah,
thanks.
And maybe
go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I was just going to say the last thing. Yeah, and I know I just kind of scratched the surface on the authoring tool, but really at the end of the day, that is kind of the engine that's used to create everything you saw. So, from a usability perspective, it really is kind of a drag and drop, point and click interface from a creation perspective. So this is not something that, again, like I said, requires a coding, a heavy dev and IT lift. It is something that the business owns. Now, of course, there's training on how to use the WalkMe tool, of course. So we have something called the Digital Adoption Institute, which is, basically our training to get your builders up to speed on how to leverage the technology. But again, not something that requires a coding background.
Super. And I see there's one last question, I think, and also there's actually more being published. So Ben, maybe you could share your screen with the presentation slide, and then I can ask the questions. Is that all right?
Yes, absolutely. Dan, did you want to
Super.
share? And I'll yeah. Let me go ahead and do that.
Super. So next one is WalkMe compliant with WCAG 2.1? Certainly, as you know, we're actively, and I've mentioned the 5 clients already in the Canadian federal government using WalkMe. WCAG is not an issue. I So they have tested that. I think there might be some qualifications around that, but it's not an issue as I understand. Dan or Ben, if you could definitely share your screen, we'll get in some of the questions as well.
Yes, absolutely. It looks like Dan just shared, and I'm sharing again. Perfect. Yeah, so absolutely. So I can definitely field, around accessibility specifically. And let me share. It looks like someone else is sharing, Barry. I'm not sure if
maybe I got to stop sharing. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah. So yeah, from a accessibility perspective, we obviously adhere to the main accessibility standards, ADA standards, Section 508. So the solution is it's fully accessible. Keyboard navigation, screen readers. The focus right now is on web. Desktop is also on the roadmap. But yes, we are absolutely in compliance with the main accessibility standards.
Super, and I just saw, thank you so much. My apologies to Veteran Affairs. They mentioned Veteran Affairs has been using WalkMe since April for GCKs. Thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate that. And my apologies for forgetting Veteran Affairs. How could I do that? An anonymous question: if we have a public-facing application that is publicly available, can WalkMe be integrated so that the general public could obtain assistance in using public-facing applications? I know the answer is yes, but go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, that's a great question and great answer, Barry. Yeah, so the short answer is absolutely. So we have clients using WalkMe both on internal, obviously employee-facing applications like SharePoint, Teams, but also using this externally to the public. So on their, kind of consumer-facing application, there's really no issue from our perspective, right? As long as they're accessing the system within a browser, it's HTML-based, then yes, WalkMe can definitely support that use case.
Super. I think the question around usability is also the same gentleman, I think, jumped in or lady who's on the other side was really asking, are you, and I believe we are, I'm trying to find it now. Sorry. The usability, are you doing with, I think the question, and I can't seem to find it here, was saying, are you doing, yeah, there it is. Are you using the testing process and methodologies with the public sector? Definitely with the clients we're working with. And I think if you're saying, are you meaning public, the citizens of Canada? There is already at least one facing public website that is being used with the Canadian citizens. That's the way to put it. Yeah, I think that's the question. I think we've answered that. And I'll ask this question. I'm hoping that either Tyler or one of our team might know this. There was mention of WalkMe having gone through the security compliance assessment. Is that with CCCS? Does anyone know the answer to that? And I think we have gone through that. I think we have, but we'll double check that, and we'll if the person would like to ask us directly, by all means, send an email to Eric Hine at orangutech.com, and we'll get that answer for you. I think we have. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I really want to thank both our good friend Dan Fanaberia and for Ben Husani for dialing in and doing a great job. I thought both the presentation and the demos were excellent. I thank the audience for participating and for asking some great questions. Thank you, everybody. We'll dial off now. We will post this on the Orangutech YouTube channel, and we'll let everybody know where that is. We'll send out a link if you'd like to watch it again, or if you'd like to share it with anyone within your department or any of your peers. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Bye.